Hey, good morning. Listen, I'm so glad you're here. If no one said to you this morning that they're glad to see you, I'm glad to see you. You know what? And I just want to, I don't know. Maybe this is more for me than it is for you, but I believe it's for all of us. Okay. Small is not insignificant. You need to hear me. Small is not insignificant, okay? The Lord does not often move through a large majority of people. When you read through the Bible from the beginning to the end, what you find is the Lord begins to move and meet with a remnant, a small group of people. Those whose lives are fully devoted to him. He begins to turn people's hearts towards him, not en masse, not in the crowds, right? But in the ones and the twos. He begins to turn a remnant towards them. If you remember, there's even the story of Elijah who stands on the top of Mount Carmel facing, it was like 350 or 450 prophets of Baal who were, demonic worshipers. They were worshiping demonic gods. And Elijah stood there by himself, the small, the remnant, standing on the promises of who God is. And God came in a powerful way. After that moment, Elijah went into a deep depression and he ran and he went and he hid. And he said to the Lord, when he finally met up with the Lord, he said, I am all alone. And God said, no, you're not. I have those, forgive me, I don't remember the number, but there was like 100 prophets who have not bowed their knee to the demonic. And with them, he turned an entire nation. So I just, for those who are here, and this is your family, you're here week in and week out. I want to encourage you, okay? I want to encourage you. Small is not insignificant. The Lord is doing incredible things in our midst, in our church, in your life, and in my life. The Lord is at work. Amen? Okay, that has nothing to do with what I'm talking about today. Jesus calls out in the Gospels, and he says this phrase, follow me, follow me. The invitation that Jesus calls out to us and to follow me is inclusive. Like no one is left out. Jesus is not an exclusive club. Okay, Jesus is inclusive. Whoever would give themselves to follow him, he says, come after me. He includes everyone. And this call, the invitation to follow me, is an invitation to the path of discipleship to Jesus, where we become like Jesus. To become like him, we have to be with him, spending actual time with Jesus. So today, I want to talk about spending time with Jesus in worship. In this house, in this church, worship is a core value. This is one of the core messages of our church. Worship isn't something that we do before we get to everything else that we have planned to do. Worship isn't that the few minutes that we do at the beginning of our gatherings until we can get that out of the way so that I can get up or Renee can get up and we can share a message. Right? Worship is it is the most important thing that we are going to do when we gather together is worship Jesus. Because when we gather together, this is all about Jesus. It's not all about us, right? It's not all about me. It's not all about Renee as your pastors. It's about Jesus. Worshiping Jesus is central to our lives as his followers. And it's our priority when we gather together as a church community to be with him and to worship him. If you've got your Bibles, we're going to go to two different stories. First one is in Luke 10, and the second one is in Mark chapter 14. So take your Bibles, go to Luke chapter 10, and then go to Mark chapter 14. I'm calling my sermon this morning, Worship Lessons from Mary of Bethany. From Mary of Bethany. Every time we read a story in the Bible about Mary of Bethany, she is found in the exact same place, at the feet of Jesus. Every time Mary is mentioned, she is found at the feet of Jesus. The first time we hear about Mary is Jesus visiting her home. It's the home of Martha and Mary. And she's found at the feet of Jesus listening to him teach. When Mary's brother dies, Lazarus, she is found at Jesus' feet. And at Simon's house for dinner, she is found at Jesus' feet. We're going to look at a couple of these stories today. So if you've got your finger in Luke chapter 10, that's where we're going to start. Luke chapter 10 and verse 38. It says, now while they were on their way, Jesus entered a village called Bethany, and a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. She had a sister named Mary who seated herself at the Lord's feet and was continually listening to his teaching. But Martha was very busy and distracted with all of her serving responsibilities. And she approached him and said, Lord, is it of no concern to you that my sister has left me to do the serving alone? Tell her to help me and to do her part. But the Lord replied to her, Martha, Martha. How many people in your head you're hearing, Martha, Martha, Martha? There's a few of you, okay. You are worried and bothered and anxious about so many things, but only one thing is necessary. For Mary has chosen the good part, which will not be taken away from her. The position of Mary at the feet of Jesus is not simply a description of where she is in the room in relation to everybody else in the room. It is a description of the posture of her heart. It speaks to her submission to Jesus as Lord, as King in her life. It communicates her deep devotion, her admiration, her adoration of Jesus, which are all aspects of worship. See, in worship, when we worship Jesus, we sing, we declare of our devotion to Jesus, our adoration of Jesus, of who he is, of his worth. Mary's desire is to be with Jesus at his feet, to worship him, to prioritize him above everyone else, above everything else. See, when she's in Jesus' presence, she is fully present with him, and she allows nothing to distract her. Jesus and Jesus alone is her priority. So Mary and Martha, they welcome Jesus into their home. Mary sits herself down at Jesus' feet while Martha is busy. And it says that she's distracted with her serving of Jesus. Now, Martha's clearly annoyed. When you read this text, you can hear the annoyance of Martha. And she allows her annoyance to spill forth, and she comes to Jesus and she begins to question him. Do you not care? Lord, do you not care that she is sitting at your feet and I am left alone to do all the serving, to take care of all the responsibilities of the guests in the house? Do you not care that I'm doing all the work? Has anyone else ever been in a situation where you feel like you are the only one working? Everyone's right. Like I've been on some job sites. I've been doing some things, some projects, and I look around and it's like, what are you all doing? Like I'm the only one working. And it's especially bad if you've got siblings, right? You've got siblings and you know your mom or your dad is giving you some chores to work on, and you look around and like your brother's like hanging out. They're on their phone. They're like, what are you even doing? This happened in my house. I'm a middle child, so I've got an older brother and a younger brother. And man, a handful of times every week you could hear this in our house. Mom! Fill in the appropriate name of the sibling who is doing nothing. They're not helping me with fill in the blank of, specific chore of the moment, right? And it was never me. I'm always a hard worker, but it was like my brother Dave or my younger brother Scott, and they were feet up, they were lazy, they were dragging their feet. I'm kidding. Like if you're watching or listening in retrospect, you guys were awesome. You always did the lion's share of the work. We've had these moments where people are just slackers. And they're not doing anything. They're not pulling their weight. We looked at them, we thought, man, you're lazy. See, but here's the thing. This wasn't the case with Mary. Mary wasn't being lazy. Mary was being intentional. She was intentionally wasting her time on Jesus. See, to those who are driven by hustle, sitting at Jesus' feet seems of little value. See, to them, it looks like laziness, wasted time. What are you doing? See, but Jesus replies to Martha and says, you're so worried. You're so anxious. You're so bothered by so many things. And that word bothered can actually be translated as distracted. He's saying, Martha, you're so distracted. See, Martha was distracted by the need of the moment. Don't hear what Jesus isn't saying. He's not saying that the need wasn't important, but that there was something there of greater importance. See, we cannot allow the tyranny of the urgent to demand our attention and crowd out what is truly important. The urgent will absolutely run your life if you allow it to. There's always something coming up that's urgent, right? It's someone reaches out like, hey, I completely forgot to do this. Maybe it's your kids. I completely forgot to work on my project and it's due tomorrow morning. How does their lack of planning turn into your urgent matter? It doesn't. But the urgent will run your life if you do not prioritize the important. Mary was focused on and present with Jesus, while Martha was distracted by serving Jesus. He tells her, hey, there's only one thing necessary. There's only one thing worth being concerned about. And Mary discovered what it was. In the Passion Translation, it reads that Jesus says, she is undistracted. Mary is undistracted, and I won't take this privilege away from her. See, Mary teaches us that our work for Jesus can never come before our love of Jesus. This isn't to say that those other things aren't important, but that the place at Jesus' feet is necessary. See, it's not one or the other. It's not sitting at Jesus' feet or working for Jesus. It's one before the other, not one or the other. We cannot allow ourselves to be distracted away from the place at Jesus' feet. The important things in life are just that. They are important. But the place at Jesus' feet is necessary. There's a big difference between what's important and what's necessary. We'll get to the important. The important things will get looked after what's necessary is done. Being with Jesus is necessary. It's like air. It's like bread. It's like water, right? This is why Jesus says, I am the bread of life. That living water comes from him. We cannot live without bread. We cannot live without water. It is necessary. Turn backwards in your Bible to Mark chapter 14. Mark chapter 14, and we'll read at verse 3. It says, well, he was in Bethany as a guest at the home of Simon the leper, and reclining at the table, a woman came with an alabaster vial of very costly and precious perfume of pure nard. And she broke the vial and poured the perfume over his head. But there are some who were indignantly remarking to one another, why has this perfume been wasted? For this perfume might have been sold for more than 300 denarii, which is a laborer's wages for a year. And the money could have been given to the poor. And they scolded her. But Jesus said, let her alone. Why are you bothering her and causing trouble? She has done a good and a beautiful thing to me. For you always have the poor with you, and whenever you wish, you can do something good to them. But you will not always have me. She has done what she could. She has anointed my body beforehand for burial. I assure you, and I solemnly say to you, wherever the good news is proclaimed throughout the world, what she has done will be told in memory of her. What a beautiful worship moment that Mary has with Jesus. She comes into the room, and this moment is for Jesus. This moment is about Jesus. This moment is to Jesus. She is with Jesus. Worship isn't about us. It's about Jesus. Worship isn't for people. It's for him. See, Mary shows us what it looks like to have eyes only for Jesus. She enters into a room that's full of people and she is out of place. But she sees only him. She doesn't see anyone else. She's completely focused on him. She is determined to be with him. She's determined to make herself low at his feet, regardless of who's there. Her care is only for Jesus. Worship is ministering to him. It's giving to him. It's being with him. It's expressing our love, our adoration, our awe, and reverence for who he is. Worship is about giving our lives as an offering to him. See, if it's not to him or for him, it's not worship. It says in the passage, but there were some, in air quotes, there were some who were not pleased with what Mary was doing. And then it also says that they, in quotes, they had strong opinions about Mary and her offering. Let me tell you, some and they have a lot of strong opinions. They carry a lot of weight. They want to try and influence what you're going to do with your life. While some people don't like, well, they say, who are some and who are they? This is the nondescript people. In John chapter 12, it actually, same story, but John names Judas as one who was upset. But it's not just Judas, because in Matthew 26, the exact same story, Matthew says that the disciples were the some and the they. It was those closest to Jesus. There's nobody on earth that spent more time with Jesus than the disciples, and they were offended by Mary's offering of worship. See, they and some never take priority over him. Extravagant worship is offensive, but it's not offensive to those who you'd think would be offended. Like, I think if you step back and you think, who's going to be offended by the extravagant worship of Jesus? You probably think, well, it's those that don't know Jesus, those that don't have value for Jesus. But that's not the case. It was the ones closest to Jesus that were offended by what Mary was doing. It says that the disciples were indignant, which means that they were annoyed. They were annoyed with Mary. Those that don't know Jesus are rarely concerned with our worship of him and the cost of it. Today, the value of that perfume that Mary brought and poured on Jesus would have been about $72,000. Can you imagine one person spending $72,000 on one moment of worship to Jesus? This is not a collective community. This is not thousands of people. It's not a huge event where they've, rented a stage and they've got a permit for a park and they've got all kinds of things that are happening. This is one person spending $72,000 on one worship moment to Jesus. Do you think there wouldn't be some in the religious community that would be a little annoyed and criticize one person spending $72,000? Not in an offering, not giving it as a tithe or to a church, but in a moment of worship. And the disciples want to know why were the poor not fed with this money? Why were the poor not looked after? See, the question is not, have the poor been fed, but has Jesus been loved? And they perceive it as wasteful for Mary to do this. But what's given to Jesus in worship is never a waste. It's not our time, not our finances, not our reputation. See, Jesus is worth it all. Mary teaches us that if it's a gift of worship to Jesus, then it's not a waste. See, we cannot allow the opinions of people to determine our response to Jesus. Remember, our worship isn't for them. It's for him. Mary is responding to the greatness of Jesus. She's responding to his love for her. She's responding to him as the Son of God. This isn't the first time that she's been at his feet, but this is in this moment, this is the first time that the Bible records that she's completely overwhelmed with who he is and his love for her. Not only was the perfume expensive, but it was also substantial. See, in John 12 of this story, it tells us that the perfume weighed about 1 pound and would have been about 12 ounces in volume, about this much. It was costly, imagine. Sometimes I think we have a hard time imagining that. Imagine this being filled with perfume and someone spent $72,000 on this. And you're like, wow, so small for $72,000. But when the perfume is poured on the head of Jesus, this small amount doesn't quite seem like such a small amount. Imagine 12 ounces poured on his head. Right, in John, it talks about how she poured it on his feet and that she took her hair down. It's common for women to have their hair covered. It was uncommon for them to uncover their hair, but she took her hair down. And after pouring oil on his feet, the perfume, she wiped his feet with her hair. This doesn't seem like a lot if you're going to drink it, but if I was to pour it on Stephen's head, it seems like a lot. It's not just like we anoint like this. This is right. This is how we anoint. We do a little dab on people's heads because we have these cute little vials of oil, right? But she takes 12 ounces and just begins to pour it out upon his feet. Doesn't seem like a small amount anymore, does it? $72,000, and she just dumped it on Jesus. It was expensive and it was substantial. It was a lot. How many times have you and I been in a worship situation, a worship setting, and we've seen someone worshiping and we thought to ourselves, that's a little much. They need to tone it down just a little bit. Everybody is beginning to look at them, right? And we're like, listen, it's not about you, it's about Jesus, but you're making it look like it's all about you. Maybe they're sitting there and they're weeping and they're sobbing because they're overcome and overwhelmed with the presence of Jesus. And we're like, maybe they need to take that outside. Maybe it was someone who was dancing extravagantly and wildly dancing. Or maybe it was, maybe because I don't really dance. If you notice in worship, I bounce and I hop one leg, but maybe it was you saw someone and they were doing what looked like an interpretive dance. And you're like, we don't usually do this. We usually look down our nose, and we look down our nose and we're like, that's weird. They shouldn't do that. Or maybe someone was waving a flag or a ribbon or a colorful piece of silk, and we're like, what is happening right now? Everybody's looking at them. What are they doing? Or maybe someone brought a shofar. If you've never heard a shofar, the moment you hear it, you're going to be like, what is happening? But it's not that. It's worse than that. It doesn't come out so smoothly. But listen, it's not for you. It's for Jesus, and he's worth it. It's so tempting to see the lavish cost of Mary's act and feel like, man, that's so far beyond my means. I'm just going to be honest. if I don't have the $72,000 to spend on this to give to Jesus. And so I explain the value of it so that we can bring it into our concept, because we don't have a concept for what Mary did. And then we're like, oh my gosh, like that's so far beyond what I can do. And because it's so far beyond my means, then I back it up and I just offer token worship instead. Because the financial cost and the extravagance financially is so far beyond my means, so I'm just gonna back it up and I'm just gonna bring a token of a couple pennies instead. But when we do that, we're absolutely missing the point. Because the point is not about the financial cost of what Mary did. It's about bringing yourself to him, all of yourself, and not holding anything back. See, the alabaster box or jar that the perfume was stored in, it represents your life, and the perfume is who you are. See, alabaster is a mineral. It's basically dirt. And it's kind of semi-translucent, so like light will kind of pass through it and you can kind of see shapes in it, but it's basically it's made of substance of the earth. Do you know what else is made of the substance of the earth? Us, right? In the beginning, it says that God grabbed the dirt of the earth and he formed Adam with his hands from the dirt, and then he breathed in Adam and he breathed in him the breath of life. We're basically just dirt, minerals gathered together. See, the alabaster jar, it represents your life. And when we read it, it says that she broke it. Like you can't reseal this alabaster jar. It usually has a narrow neck on it, and you snap the neck off of it to access what's inside. Once she snapped the neck off the jar, once she broke the jar, there was no going back. You see, this is us. We are to break open our lives and pour out all of who we are on Jesus. It's really all I have. What else can I bring to God? What can I give Jesus? He doesn't need my money. Right? Like it's all we come into the world with the same thing that we leave the world with. Just us. This is all I have, is me. It's my life. It's my time. It's my love. I don't have anything else. This is the most precious thing to me. People will spend exorbitant amounts of money to extend their life because they realize that life is worth more than the money. It's not about the money. He wants your life. He wants you to break open the box of your life, so to speak, and pour out everything you are on his feet. Waste it on him. It's the most extravagant gift that I can give. You know, you won't find a rebuke in the Bible for anyone worshiping too much. Only those not worshiping enough. That's sobering right there. Jesus rebuked the religious leaders for just going through the motions of worship. There was a rich young ruler that came to Jesus and said, hey, I've kept the law. I've kept all the commandments since I was a boy. What else do I need to do? And Jesus looked at him and saw he was very wealthy. And he says, you need to sell all that you have, give it away to the poor, and then come and follow me. And he couldn't do it. And he walked away. It says the story says he walked away sad. And that sad rich man became an object lesson. The disciples were reading in the story. They're annoyed and they rebuke and scold Mary. They're the ones who ends up getting rebuked. There's a story in the Old Testament about David who dances wildly, it says, before the ark, which is the presence of God. And his wife is up in the tower and she looks out her window and she sees David dancing wildly like a common person. He's a king and he's dancing like a common person. And when he comes home, she rebukes him for how he worshiped the Lord. Here's the thing, the Lord loved David's dancing, was not so fond of his wife's rebuke, and she remained childless for her entire life. See, Mary shows us that Jesus isn't concerned with our extravagance in worship, just our lack of it. Like, he's looking for people who are going to go all in, who are going to give it all to him and for him, whether they do it alone like Mary in a room full of people and no one's doing what she's doing. She's the only one down at his feet, overwhelmed with his presence, worshiping him with everything that she's got. Doesn't matter if it's one or if there's 10,000s. If you only do it when there's 10,000, it doesn't mean anything if you won't do it when it's just you. The Bible says that our God is an all-consuming fire and that he is jealous for us. In fact, one of the names of God, it says in the book of Exodus, his name is jealous. It's not very often that we use that for one of God's names, but it says that he is jealous. Can I be so bold as to suggest that God doesn't like to share? Yes, he shares lots of things with me and you, but he does not like to share you. He does not like to share you with anyone else, with anything else, because he's jealous for you. He wants the flame of his passion to be poured out upon your life and ignite your life with his fiery presence, to be consumed in every area. And then he wants our passion for him to be poured back out on his feet. If we're going to be with Jesus, then let's be all in with him. There are too many people that go to church to get as much as they can for as little as they can. Jesus doesn't want much. He wants it all. He doesn't want much of you. He wants all of you. See, I wonder, as I was sitting and as I was studying this through, I wonder if the issue is that in our hearts that we don't value ministry to Jesus as much as we value ministry for Jesus. Or we don't, and I know there's this is going to be almost like an obvious comment, or that we don't understand the value of Jesus. Now, I know that on this side of eternity, we're not really able to comprehend the worth of Jesus. But as much as we possibly can, we don't. There's also the possibility that the reason we don't give more of ourselves to being with Jesus is that we've only got a little left to give, because we've spent ourselves on other things and on other places and on other people before we got to Jesus. We live these depleted lives because we have overcommitted to things that have no eternal value. See, it's a value issue. Some even value their reputation too much to give all of themselves in worship because they don't want to be seen as weak. I don't want to be the one that falls apart in a room full of people because I'm overwhelmed with who Jesus is and what he's done for my life. So the disciples are here and they're annoyed with Mary. They're criticizing Mary, but Jesus defends her. Let me just tell you, it's a good day when Jesus defends you. And he says, leave her alone. Why are you bothering her? Not only why are you bothering her, but why are you causing trouble? See, when we take our eyes off of Jesus, we get in trouble and we cause trouble. I think, honestly, of all the problems in all the churches in all the world, I think they would all go away if we just put our eyes on Jesus. We cause trouble when we take our eyes off of Jesus. Did you see brother so-and-so and what he was doing? Did you see, sister so-and-so and what she was wearing, how she acted in worship? Taking our eyes off of Jesus, when we put our eyes on people, we get into trouble. The same thing with us who stand on the stage, myself or Renee or Ryan or any of the other worship team. We start putting our eyes on the people who are on the stage and we're causing trouble. You're about to get into trouble. Put your eyes on Jesus. Put your eyes on Jesus. The disciples are criticizing Mary. Jesus defends her and says, she has done a good and a beautiful thing to me. See, if we all have our eyes on Jesus, then no one is looking at each other and no one is judging anyone's worship or lack of it. Honestly, it's not my concern, your lack or extravagance of worship to Jesus. It's his concern. I'm going to have the worship team come. The final lesson that Mary teaches us is the principle of now. The principle of now. See, the principle of now says that we do now what we value the most. There's a great cost to now. Later, not so costly, because when we defer to later, we're deferring to a time that may or may not ever arrive. Later doesn't include eternity, though. Renee mentioned this, right? Because in heaven's a place where there is no time, so there's no now or later, there just is. Make no mistake, we will worship Jesus in heaven for all of eternity. The question is, will we worship him now? Jesus said Mary had done a beautiful thing. This is interesting. He says, she anointed my body for burial beforehand. You never anointed someone before they died for their burial. It was always after. See, there was another group that went to anoint the body of Jesus after he was buried. They waited till after, to later. In Mark 16, we read that Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome went to Jesus' tomb after the Sabbath to anoint his body, but they discovered that he wasn't there because he had raised from the dead. One anointed now, others waited until later, but later missed out. Let me tell you, later misses out every time. If you wait till later, you miss out every time. If you wait till later to give yourself to the Lord, all of yourself, then you're going to miss out. Later may not ever arrive. Now's all we have. This is the only moment you've got. There's no guarantee of later. There's no guarantee of the clock reaching 11:53, which is in like 45 seconds. We don't know what later brings. All I have is now, and this is the best gift of worship that I can bring. It's the most extravagant thing I have is my now. And the cost of now becomes our reward for later. Because Jesus said, what she has done will be told in memory of her wherever the gospel is preached. Mary will be talked about. For all of the rest of time, Mary's going to be talked about because she valued Jesus and his feet. Worshiping, giving all of herself. She didn't wait till later, she did it now. She was honored by Jesus in the moment. And she had a moment with Jesus that nobody could ever take away from her. Nobody could ever replace that with what she had. I also like to point out that Mary's the only one in the room that left smelling the same as Jesus. Everyone else just smelled it. She left smelling like him. See, when you pour your life out on Jesus, you carry the fragrance of Jesus. Have you ever been in a room where suddenly the fragrance in the atmosphere changed and you began to smell something that wasn't there a moment before? Maybe it's like suddenly it smells very floral, like flowers. Or suddenly it starts to smell like fresh baked bread. And there's no flowers in the room and there's no bread in the room. It's the fragrance of Jesus as we pour ourselves out in worship on his feet. See, to follow Jesus, we must be with Jesus in worship. And when we prioritize time with him in worship, what we're doing is we're establishing our value system that we will live by. We are establishing that Jesus is more valuable and will be prioritized first and above everything and everyone else. So the cost to us, it might be financial, it might be our reputation, it might be our time. But no matter what the cost is, it doesn't compete with the worth of Jesus because he's worth it. He's worthy of it all. In English, worship comes from an old English word that's worth-ship, and directly translates to worth giving or ascribing worth to something. Worship literally means assign worth to something. We all worship. Not all of us worship Jesus, but we worship that which we assign worth to. The most valuable thing in your life, that's what you worship. Worship is part of being with Jesus. You can't follow him without being with him. And you can't be with him without seeing his worth. And you can't see his worth and not worship him. Let's stand. We're going to worship. I've got, there's communion on either side of the stage, and so I'm going to invite you to come as we begin to worship. This is our opportunity to be reminded that what he's after is us. What he wants is all of me. And I want to invite you to come and get communion. We practice open communion, so if you're a follower of Jesus, just come and get it. And as we worship, give thanks for his body, which is the bread. Give thanks for his blood, which is the juice. And just take the moment to be with him. This is the end of our service. There's nothing else that we have to do. And so we're just going to spend time. As long as you spend, we'll be here with you. And so if you have to go, you're free to go at any time. Let's go ahead.